think I fucked up. It doesn't matter. It's good enough. Thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast.
You blew it!
Remake, rewind, blast from the past, 'cause it stand the test of time. Remake, rewind.
Thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast where we decide if remakes or reboots should have happened. I'm Mike, and I've got Alex here with me. What's up, Alex?
Not much, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. It's been a rough week, but I ended it watching some great movies. I really enjoyed the movies that we're about to talk about.
Hell yeah, buddy.
And some of the other stuff we watched on the What Have We Been Up To, Bud? Will be fun to talk about. So, yeah, the end of the week was pretty good. Last week was rough, but I'm happy to be talking about some good movies.
Well, listen, we're doing a podcast, not therapy.
It's funny, that'll come up in a little bit. Anywho,
Yes.
Just a little teaser. Anywho, we covered the classic 3:10 to Yuma, and I don't know if it's fair to say it's a classic. It is in the Criterion Collection, but it wasn't like a huge Western.
Well, I don't think it's a classic in when you're talking about film as a whole, not like Citizen Kane or something. But I think if you're talking about Westerns, it is.
It's more now. Like, I looked it up, and it wasn't a big movie. Like, it wasn't a big movie at the time. It
Right.
gained popularity decades later.
Mm-hmm.
So, this movie came out 3 years before Magnificent Seven and well before the Clint Eastwood movies. Like, when you look at Westerns, 3:10 to Yuma is not the first one you think of. You think of Magnificent Seven, Fistful of Dollars, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, things like that. But this one's really good. Like, we'll talk about it. And then the 2007 remake with Christian Bale and Russell Crowe. So we're going to be talking about those. And I liked both of them. I'm just going to say it at the top. I thought they were both very good, and I had a really good time watching them.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching both of them. I watched them a day apart. I watched one today and one yesterday, and I didn't have a problem watching the same story twice. It wasn't boring or anything.
No, and this one, I think we're going to, once we get into it, we're going to kind of just burn through the first movie, and I think we're going to really spend more time on the second movie. To borrow a phrase from a former host, David,
Boo.
The 2007 one is kind of like the unabridged version of the 1957 one. It has a lot of scenes that are word for word the same. There are a lot of characters that have the exact same dialogue. There are a few scenes where they swap a couple lines, but for the most part, the dialogue is very, very close to the same as the original movie. And they add a lot more in terms of the journey. But the movie's only like a half an hour longer than the original version, but I feel like it does a lot more. Like, it makes those minutes count. But
yeah, it's got a number of new scenes and threads.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you give me the elevator pitch for the movie? And we're just going to do one elevator pitch because realistically, the plots are the same.
Yeah, this movie is about a down on his luck cattle rancher that crosses paths with one of the deadliest outlaws in the West and ends up, by chance, having a hand in his capture. And to make some money to keep his farm going, he agrees to assist bringing the outlaw to the prison train that'll take him to Yuma. But he has to get him there before his band of fellow outlaws catches them and kills everybody.
Yep, pretty succinct, and it's a pretty classic tale. Like, there's not a lot to it, but I think it does a really good job with the characters. When you break it down to its simplest components, I think this is just like almost like a buddy cop movie or like a buddy road trip, planes, trains, automobiles kind of thing, where it's two guys who seemingly don't have anything in common, but kind of bond on the road.
Yeah, I mean, I would take it even a step further than that. I think it's more clear in the second movie, which we'll get to. But I think these are two diametrically opposed men. Maybe that's a little harsh, but they are two different sides of a coin that seem to believe in opposite things, and they're forced to work towards a common goal, sort of. Even though Ben Wade doesn't want to be taken to prison, but he also wants to stay alive, and they're moving through treacherous terrain, so he doesn't want to be killed by Native American tribes that are out to get them as they're getting to the train. The common goal is keeping him alive.
Keeping them alive. So what I like about this movie is, and it's I'm sure it's not the first movie, and it definitely isn't the last movie, but having the villain that has a code, a villain that you almost like. Like, Ben Wade is a killer, and a cold-blooded killer. Like, the opening scene of the movie, he kills one of his own guys.
Just like Speed, kind of. He shoots through his, yeah,
kind of, except it's the good guy, but it's the bad
just
guy.
like Speed.
But yeah, so, the beginning of the movie, the rancher is just out looking for his cattle. They got out, and he, like Alex said, they kind of stumble across a stagecoach robbery.
They follow the cattle to the stagecoach robbery because the Ben Wade's gang is using the cattle to block the road so that the stagecoach can't go by. And I think they freed him.
Correct.
I think they freed the cattle in the first movie.
They did, yeah. So in the first movie, they absolutely did free the cattle. They used it as a roadblock, and at one point the stagecoach driver is able to get one of Ben Wade's men while Ben Wade goes and talks to Dan Evans, who's our hero of the story. And Ben Wade's like, hey, look, dude, just give us 5 minutes. The cattle, we are not going to harm the cattle, and we'll take your horses and we'll leave them about halfway down the road. We don't want you going to the marshal, and we'll let you live. And so Dan Evans is with his kids, and he's like, yeah, I guess that's fair. And the kids kind of look at him like, are you serious, Dad?
Dad, you're
Like,
a pussy.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much that's what happens. So when Ben Wade goes back, one of his guys is being used as a human shield, and he just shoots through the guy.
That's right.
And yeah, he shoots through the guy, kills everyone, and then you see Butterfield is kind of the money bags of this movie. He works for a stagecoach company, and he's just trying to get his passengers into Brisbee, which is the town. Bisbee, not Brisbee.
Bisbee, yeah.
Bisbee. And
Like Frisbee, but
yeah,
it is.
so Butterfield's just trying to survive and get these people to town. And that's kind of like the opening act of this movie, is this big stagecoach robbery. Then he gets into, so Dan Evans decides to go into town to beg for money. So for $200 so he can get 6 months worth of water, because he just feels it in his bones that this drought, like the whole movie.
No, he's not.
Everyone's just
he's
down
not
on
on
their
the
luck
street
for the drought.
panhandling though. He goes to the banker or whatever and asks for a loan that he shouldn't get.
Yeah. So he goes, and the banker is basically like, I don't have any money. Like, nobody's paid me in months because of the drought. Like, even if I wanted to give you the money, couldn't do it. Sorry, bud. So there's through sheer happenstance, the gang is there, and they kind of leave the town because Ben Wade wants to bang the barmaid.
Well,
And it turns out
they leave the town because they need to get to the border or whatever. But Ben Wade stays behind because he wants to bang the barmaid.
because he has a history with her. He recognizes her from some other town, in another state.
Which, whatever. He just wants to fuck her.
Yeah. That scene, it works. Like, I thought that Ben Wade was very charming in this scene. Like,
Okay, so
she was clearly into it.
let's back up for 1 second. Earlier you described this version of Ben Wade, which is Glenn Ford, right?
Yes.
Who's Pa Kent in Superman.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's Dan Evans. Dan Evans is Glenn Wade. Superman's dad, I think.
No, you're wrong.
No, I have it reversed. Oh, my bad.
I think. I don't know.
It's fine. It doesn't matter. They're
Anyway,
dead.
He dies in Superman. He's dead in real life. He's a method actor. So you said that he has a code. And I think that's probably true in this movie, but I didn't really pick that up. I picked up that he's super charming, and he's a little bit of like a gentleman amongst outlaws in a way. Like he appreciates beauty and is a little bit calmer. He's not an animal like his cohorts, but I don't know that I ever saw him expel that he had a code. Unless I just
His code is that he says it almost explicitly. He wants to do things the easiest way, and he doesn't enjoy killing. Like, he's willing to kill.
That's not a code.
But he goes, No, he goes out of his way and says, like, I don't like killing. I want to do the things easy. And he goes out of his way, even at the beginning of the movie, to protect Dan Evans. Like, he only, it's almost like,
Every time you say Dan
it's not
Evans, I
Robin
think you're
Hood.
saying Dan Stevens from Legion.
From Beauty and the Beast and Legion. Yeah.
And,
He's cool. I've
Downton
met him.
Abbey. He
Yeah.
seems super cool, man. I like him.
Yeah,
in
no,
that,
I've met him. He's
like
cool.
him in the Will Ferrell movie that just came out about Eurovision. I think
The
it's called,
Eurovision?
It's called Eurovision.
It's called Eurovision. Yeah. It's
Dan
the
Evans is
Song
sexy,
of
man.
Ice and Storms or whatever.
Yeah.
But he, at the very beginning of the movie, Ben Wade goes out of his way to protect Dan Evans, saying, like, you just stay out here. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to take your horses. We're not going to take your cattle. We're just going to leave them down the road so you can get it.
Yeah.
Like,
He's a thief
in a lot of other
Argo.
Westerns. Exactly. But if this were up to, like, his crew, the crew would have killed these guys.
Yeah.
So I think he doesn't necessarily want to harm people. And then when he gets into town, he tells them, like, hey, now part of it is he wants a distraction, but he tells them, hey, the stagecoach got robbed. Like, go send somebody out there to help him out. And part of that is he doesn't necessarily want the innocent passengers to die. So I think he does legitimately care or doesn't want to harm innocent people.
Yeah.
So I think that's fair. And then he has a respect. Like, if there's somebody he respects, you see this a little bit more in the second movie, but in this movie he comes to respect Dan Evans almost immediately because he has this really great scene. And I think it's effective in both movies. But Dan Evans shows up into the bar. He sees Ben sitting there, and he kind of says, hey, dude, you kind of fucked me over. 2 of my cattle died. And the guy's like, okay, my bad. Gives him $2 for the cattle. And he goes, also, it took me half a day to get all my cattle back to my ranch. And he's like, okay, how much do you charge for a day's labor? I charge 2 days. Cool. Here's 2 days for your half. Oh, and here's $2 more for your kids. And then Dan sees that the cops are coming, so he decides to distract him and help out. And he's like, well, I want another couple bucks because you scared me. And the guy does it, and you
Make
can
me feel
see that
nervous.
Ben Wade, like, respects it. Like, he's like, dude, this guy knows I have money. He's not asking for anything outrageous. And I did hurt this guy that I didn't mean to hurt. Like, this wasn't my plan. I meant to hurt this rich, wealthy guy.
Yeah.
And this other guy got caught in their crosshairs. I'm going to take care of the guy.
Ben's charming because he's like, I fucked this guy a little bit and he's fucking me back a little bit, but he's got a reason to, and I kind of respect that.
Yeah, he likes it. So with that respect, like, if it was any other Western movie, he would have got killed.
Yeah.
Any other outlaw bandit in any other Western movie, he would have been dead. So I appreciate that he does kind of have this code. It's like this little guy. And I think what it comes down to is throughout the movie, he hints that even with the barmaid, and then he hints at it again with Dan's wife when they're at the ranch. And he hits it again at the end of the movie when he sees the wife, kind of cheering on Dan at the end of the movie. He says, like, maybe I want a wife. So I think deep down, he wishes he could be like Dan. And I think that's kind of he recognizes that in a different world, in a different place, different time, he could have been a family man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really what comes down to why he bonds with Dan throughout this movie is he sees a lot in him, and the circumstances are just what caused them to have different lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think I don't want to talk too much about the second movie, but I think all of that stuff is more apparent in the remake.
Oh, for sure. And they beef up some of the characters in this movie's roles to really hammer that point home in the second movie.
Let's keep talking about the first movie for a little bit though. I liked Glenn Ford in this, and I liked how charming he was, but I also kind of didn't like him in it.
I agree. Like, it's weird because the acting, obviously acting has changed. So, it got to a point where
This is
everything
pretty
was
like,
just kind of melodrama kind of acting. And then when you get into
this like isn't the height of melodrama. Maybe that's what I cut you off. That's what
Not
I was
quite.
Say. Yeah, this feels like pretty natural, but it still feels dated.
it's a little hokey.
It's a little dated. And everybody is so pretty. You know what I mean? They're out there in the West, fucking roughing it, being ranch hands and outlaws and shit, but they look fantastic.
Right.
The women have perfect skin.
Yeah, the both women in this movie were gorgeous women who, their
The
hair was perfect, everything.
Yeah, the poverty-stricken wife of the ranch hand has like amazing hair and shit.
Right. Well, so the thing is, this is that kind of
It's
slightly
old Hollywood.
hokey
It's glamorous.
movie. And this was like 3 years before you got into Magnificent Seven. And as you get into like the 60s and 70s, you had that stoic, angry, like just that explosive acting.
Yeah.
You know, when we get into the modern one, it's a little bit more realistic. So this is kind of on that like weird transition period of acting, how it went from being, you know, not over the top, but, you know, just a little hokey before getting into the more gritty Westerns that came just a few years later.
I will say, while the acting is a little bit dated, the cinematography and the choice of lenses and camera movement feels very modern. I noticed that in the first like 5 or 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, it's beautifully shot. And the other thing is, like, at this
the
point,
Voodoo
obviously,
thing that we watched was a wonderful restoration too.
the Voodoo thing.
We watched it on Voodoo.
Oh,
The digital copy
Yeah.
that we had on Voodoo.
yeah,
was
it
a
looks great. Well, in this movie,
Or, not
1957,
transfers. Whatever.
they were already filming in color, obviously, for quite a while. But they filmed this one in black and white specifically because it was supposed to be a drought, and it was just to make it look
like
just
Vita
more
Sacus.
depressing and despair. Yeah, exactly. So they did that on purpose. I do agree that it was beautifully shot. I really like the landscape. The towns look great. Everything about this movie looked fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a very well-made movie.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And, you know, it's a very simple movie. Like, I don't really know how much more to say about this movie because really I just kind of want to highlight the differences in the second movie. But this whole movie, it's really just Ben Wade being charming. Like, they go through and they set up this whole ruse where they pretend like they fall in a ditch. So that way the bad guys who are watching think that they go somewhere else, but they actually sneak Ben Wade out. And he has this great scene where
Shell
he's
game.
with the family, with the kids and then the wife. And the kids are like, my dad could fucking kill you anytime he wants. My dad's a badass. He could shoot a jackrabbit from 50 yards away. And they're like, Mom, like, we should say grace, even though we're with this killer. And then like, he like is flirting with the mom in front of the husband. And she's kind of liking it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, the dad, Dan Evans, is like, dude, that wasn't cool. Come on.
Come on, man.
And everything. But she's
Be a
like,
bro.
she's like, my bad.
You were talking about him banging the barmaid in the beginning. I felt like that was pretty rapey, man. That was
No,
I mean, I guess that could have gone down like that at that time, so I can't really argue with it. But it was jarring because he just like walks up to her. You know, she's serving them drinks and stuff, and then he tells the guys to leave, or the guys take off or whatever. And then he just kind of makes his way behind the bar, and she's like, okay, this is awkward. And then he like puts his hand on her face, and he's like, so, what color are your eyes? And he like leans into her and shit.
I think you're oversimplifying it because see, they did know each other, but they knew each other. So I think
he
I
had
think
seen her at a bar. They didn't know each other.
I think
she didn't know who she.
But I
who
think
he was.
she knew who he was. She knew who he was. Like, she was very flirtatious from pretty much immediately. Like, she was
I'd have picked
keeping
up
an
on
eye on him. No, she was totally into it, and she knew who he was, and she remembered seeing him as well. I think you're right in the second movie. I think it was way worse, and it was like weird because there was a much bigger turn, and we saw a lot more of the aftermath of that relationship. It's not even really a relationship, that encounter. But I felt in this one, it seemed mutual, that they were kind of into each other. She kind of like, she knew who he was. She clearly has some past. Like she left her life. She says it's because she needs the dry climate, because she had tuberculosis. But I think
Tuberculosis?
tuberculosis.
Leave all this in.
Trina, shut the fuck up.
Did you hear me say the exact same thing?
Yeah. She had the TB.
Tuberculosis.
I hate you both. Anywho, she had the TB, but I don't buy that. I felt like there was something else going on, and that's why she's there. And I think they had a consensual encounter that night.
I felt like all of the guys in the posse kind of looked alike.
Yeah, they did.
Weird casting.
Other than the main guy, Charlie, like the number 2 guy, they all pretty much were interchangeable.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the movie when they're going through like the
well, I mean
climax
the
and they're
good
chasing
guy
through the
posse,
town.
but yeah, I mean
Oh, the
everybody
good guy
looked,
posse.
everybody looked alike
Yeah.
except for the 2 leads, basically.
And the drunk, Doc Potter.
Right.
The town drunk was just. I actually filmed part of that, and I almost sent it to you, but like, he wasn't a very good actor, the drunk guy. And throughout the movie, they kept trying to set him up as like he was going to cause problems because he was drunk, and like he even asked the kids when they're at the ranch, like, "Hey, do you have any booze?" And he's like, "No, I don't know where my dad keeps the booze." And he's like, "Oh, well, are you like worried that I asked you?" He's like, "Nope, Dad said you were going to ask about the booze, so yeah, don't even worry about it." But it's at this point, it really is just like a buddy cop, road trip movie until they get to the end of the movie, and just through like happenstance. And this is something that I like a lot more about the first movie is in this movie, the bad guys don't know where he is, where they're going. They don't know where Ben Wade is. And it turns out at the end of the movie, they actually just sent a guy to like each possible town that they would that they could go to. And they were just looking, and through sheer happenstance, they found the guy. And this is also the thing I hate about the movie, because in this one, they made a much bigger deal about the distances and where things were. So like the whole ruse was, we're going to say we're going to make it look like we're going to this town, but we're actually going to Contention so we can go to the train to Yuma. And no matter what, if they find out where he is, it doesn't matter, because they're going to chase the stagecoach for a while, and they're going to be too far to ever catch up to us. Like that was the whole linchpin of the plan. But that didn't work out. Like they found him the day of, like an hour before they were supposed to catch the train.
Well, listen, sometimes plans are bad.
No, I get that. But this particular movie, yeah, I do get that plans can be bad. But this one completely counteracts like what it says. Like they did go after the stagecoach. Now, granted, one guy from each group went somewhere else, but the entire posse shows up at the end of the movie. Like, how could they have got to this place where it took the crew, 2 days to get there, but they were able to get there in a matter of an hour?
Yeah,
that's the only thing that fell apart
it's
for me at the end
True
of the movie.
Detective season 2 type situation.
Yeah, I didn't watch that.
Oh man, it's good. Did you watch True Detective season 1?
No, it's been on my list for years. There's too much stuff. There's too much good content out there.
It's a modern classic.
I know, and I want to watch it. It's been on my list for years. I just haven't got to it. But anyway,
True Detective season 2, just so I can explain why I even brought it up, takes place in the fictional city of Vinci, California, which is a stand-in for Vernon. Do you know Vernon? It's close by.
Okay.
By LA.
Yep.
So it's similar in that it's like an industrial town. And I guess Vernon actually has a history of some corruption, but in True Detective season 2, they really like play that up. Anyway, the whole season revolves around a detective who is a true detective, investigating the corruption, takes them all across the state of California. Now, this is where it's similar to why I brought it up, to your story. I've had a drink, don't mind me. They drive all the way across California. Like they go from LA, from like South LA up to Humboldt. And it takes them like a couple hours.
That's like a 10-hour drive.
Yeah, it's a long drive. They're like, well, it's 10 a.m. We can make it in the afternoon if we leave now. And then they drive back the same day. They're like, wow, it's pretty crazy sex cult up there or whatever. And I'm like,
so they made it up to
what
Humboldt
are you doing?
And back?
You can't drive across California like that.
You can't drive there and back in one day.
You can't drive there in one day.
That's insane. So yeah, this movie, they make a point multiple times of saying there's no way they'll ever catch us. And not only do the bad guys catch them, the wife leaves the family and then comes and makes the same trip.
Yeah, she's just like going to the store.
And gets there right at the same time. Like it kind of falls apart there. Yeah. And then at the end of the movie, the big twist, and it's not really a twist, it's pretty obvious this is going to happen, but Ben Wade has a lot of respect for Dan, and so he ends up getting on the train. They both end up on the train, and he decides just to like let himself be captured, and he actually helps Dan dodge and weave and get through his crew to get to the train. And the end of the movie is kind of like the closing shot, as you see the wife is kind of following the train for a little bit, and then as soon as she can't get anywhere closer to the train, she's just like waving and smiling, and Ben and Dan kind of look at each other, and Ben's like, yeah, your wife loves you. This is great.
and then it starts raining,
And, like, that's the
and we
end
get
of the
a nice happy movie, nice happy ending.
Well, we actually hear thunder before that. Like, so I actually really liked this scene, and they do it in the other one, but I liked it better in this one. But they, when the bad guys start to show up, Ben's like looking out the window and talking to his crew, and they like fire, and Dan's like, "Don't do that again." And so that he tells his crew, like, "You get one more, like, make it count. Like, if you're gonna shoot, like, make it count." And you actually hear thunder at that point, and the crew that he came with, so like Butterfield brings like 5 guys with them. He gets there too somehow. Like, how did Butterfield and his crew get there? All these people were getting there when they are saying that it was impossible for anybody to get there. So that's the thing that doesn't make sense. But Butterfield and his crew, right? They show up, and they end up chickening out when Ben's crew shows up, which is just like, but at that point, you hear thunder, and Butterfield goes, "Hey, you don't need to do this." And Ben says, "Hey, it's going to be raining. You don't need the money anymore. Why are you still doing this?" And it becomes a point of pride. And the big thing was Alex. Was it Alex? Alex Potter? It was Alex, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Alex Potter gets killed. And he's just like, dude, this guy died. How can I just give up? Like, this guy died. The town drunk died for this. How could I do any less than the town drunk? And then so it's same thing. He has his code. Ben has his code. He respects it. And they work together to turn in Ben. That's the end of the movie.
Yeah, and like I said, it rains, so it's a happy ending because they get to keep on doing their farming shit.
And he has the $200 that he's going to get for getting the guy there.
200 whole dollars.
200 whole dollars. That's 6 months worth of water, bro.
It's crazy.
So it's a good movie. Like, we really bounced around and kind of got through it because we really want to spend more time on the second movie. But before we get to the second movie,
You should have gone for the head. What'd you do? What'd you do?
so what have you been up to, bud?
Well, I watched Bill and Ted Face the Music 2
So
nights
did
ago.
I.
It was pretty good.
It was fun.
Yeah. It's not fantastic, but I really enjoyed it.
I
exactly what
I
it
put it
needed to be.
between 1 and 2. Like, I think it.
I bought the whole set, so I'm going to go back and watch all 3 in a row. Or not in a row, but all 3 at some point.
We watched the other 2 leading up to this one, so
So
the second one's fucking weird.
yeah, I like that though.
It's fucking weird. Like, I
Station!
I didn't really remember the first half of the movie. I really only had like that fondness for the second half, like once everything starts coming together.
Well,
I
death
forgot
is the
how
best part of the
weird.
movie.
Oh, death is by far the best part of the second movie.
President
But I
of the
forgot
United
about them
States,
going
William
to heaven. Yep. I forgot that they went to heaven and hell in that movie. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, the third one was fun. I really enjoyed it. I thought it took some big swings. There was only one character I didn't like. I didn't like the robot in the movie. But other than that, I thought it was
I
fun.
understand why people didn't like him. I kind of liked him. Like it's
Yeah,
clear it's clear that he's taking the place of Death from the second one. He's this like weird out of place character.
Right.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think it kind of it worked. It just barely worked for me, but I don't begrudge anybody who it did not work for.
Yeah. I think it would have worked better for me if we know from the second movie that robots exist in this universe and they can be programmed and they can have personalities, but they do default to their programming. And in this, it just didn't seem like that worked. But overall, like, I had a blast watching it. I thought it was a great ending.
And
I
it's
thought
just
it was
like it's such a positive movie too, with like a
Yeah,
nice.
it
message.
really
It's what-
was.
It's kind of what we need right now.
I agree. It was
It's just
exactly
a fun
what I
movie
hoped
with
it
a
would
good
be.
message.
Yeah, it was fun.
And
I'm glad it came out.
Yeah, and I like Keanu and everything. It's cool to see him being a doofus instead of.
It was great
killing
seeing
people.
Alex Winter again.
I was about to say that. Like
Like, he
that
doesn't
was
do
really cool,
much.
man. He doesn't do anything. I mean, he directs, but he doesn't act in anything.
He directs, yeah. But yeah, it was great seeing him. I had a
wouldn't-
blast watching Alex Winter again.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him in something else.
Yeah. I was a little bummed they didn't bring back the original princesses.
What can you do? They didn't
Yeah,
have
it
anything
is
to
what
do
it
in
is.
this
But
movie
overall-
anyway, so.
Yeah, they not really, but it was a fun movie. And yeah, anything else that you watched?
I haven't watched any movies this week. I got I got really into playing Call of Duty Warzone for a few days. Just kind of
Fun.
I have a few friends that I play with on there, and it's gotten a little competitive. So I've been in that
nice.
mindset. I spent a lot of time building pedals this weekend, so that was fun.
Yeah, I saw that you've been doing that on the gram.
Yeah, and then just like Bob's Burgers and a little bit of Schitt's Creek too.
We're getting ready to move, so we went and looked at a lot of apartments, and then last week we did our bonus episode. We did 2 bonus episodes last week, so check those out. And then we had some technical difficulties, so our episode of Ruin My Childhood actually didn't get out until last week as well. So I spent all last week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, editing 3 different episodes for the various podcasts. So I didn't have a ton of time to do stuff. So I just kept watching The Legend of Korra, but I did start playing Days Gone. Put that in and got about an hour or 2 into that game. So
Nice.
hopefully this week I'll have a little bit more time to play that. But yeah, it was a pretty
Yeah,
lazy week.
yeah. I wrapped up a script this weekend too, so that consumed a bit
Nice.
of my time.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Well, let's dive into the second movie.
Let's do it.
So no
Oh,
elevator pitch. Same.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
before we get into it, let's credit the writer of the story that both these movies are based on, Elmore Leonard, who did the story for Jackie Brown too, and The Road.
Oh, did he?
Or no, I'm sorry,
Ah.
it's Cormac McCarthy. But
Yeah.
Elmore Leonard has done a bunch of cool stuff. Out of Sight.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know The Road is definitely Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah.
That's
Excuse me. Edit that.
one of my friends who passed away a couple of years back was his favorite book. So as a tribute, I bought that book the day of his memorial service and read that. Like I actually got the book, not the Kindle version, because I felt like it was something for him. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
great book. But this movie,
Oh, and
like
Get
I
Shorty.
said, Get Shorty.
Yeah.
Yep, it's a good movie. That one's fun. The sequel was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the sequel's not good, but it's kind of fun too. Like, I'll watch Uma Thurman and John Travolta and Cedric the Entertainer, like, and Andre 3000. Like, shit's fun, man.
Yeah. The big or Get Shorty was good though, but this movie, unabridged version, like this one, we get a lot more.
Dude, Dwayne The Rock Johnson in Be Cool is fucking great.
I don't remember him. It's now granted, it's been a very long time since I saw that movie. Like I haven't seen it since it
you
came
remember Vince
out.
Vaughn's character?
Yeah,
Vince Vaughn is
vaguely.
like the label A&R guy, and he's like a white dude that pretends he's like a fucking black like pimp rapper whatever guy. I don't know how to explain it. Like he's awful, you know.
A wankster.
Yeah, there's that old W word that I don't think is really cool to say anymore. But we used it when we were in elementary school to describe white people who are super, super, super into rap. Anyway, Dwayne is like his Dwayne. My buddy Dwayne is his bodyguard, and is plays a gay character, and is just like taking abuse the entire time up until the end, and he's so funny in that movie. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about.
No, it's not. But
I
2007,
just love The
James
Rock.
Mangold. James Mangold directed this one. James Mangold's great. I think he's a fantastic director.
And what else has he done?
He did Logan.
He did.
He did Girl
Wolverine.
Interrupted, The Wolverine. He did
Copland. Fucking Copland.
Copland. Copland's fantastic. What's the
My
other
hands are
one?
tied now.
He's
My hands are tied now.
He's directed 3 Oscar-winning performances. So he's a great director.
He's fantastic.
So,
and he feels like
Yeah,
he's kind of like a journeyman director too. Like he's not an auteur. He doesn't have a specific style, but he takes from other styles and does a really good job of making that movie, you know?
well, and he's very collaborative with the people he works with too. Like he develops relationships with his actors and becomes a partner. Like him and Hugh Jackman were partners on The Wolverine and Logan. So he's very much working and surrounding himself by the best people. So when I didn't realize this was him until I started watching it, and I was like, oh, I know this is going to be good, because prior to doing this podcast, I was never really into Westerns. And so far we've covered 3 Westerns on this podcast. We did True Grit, and I ended up loving both those movies. I definitely preferred the Coen brothers film,
Yeah,
but I
same.
still really enjoyed the original one. We did Magnificent Seven, which the original one was great. The remake sucked, but the original Magnificent Seven and Seven Samurai, fantastic movies. And this time around, I really like this movie. But when I saw James Mangold doing it, I was like, this is going to be fantastic. I know this is going to be good. And then, yeah, obviously Christian Bale and Russell Crowe are both fantastic actors. They're terrible people, fantastic
Well,
actors.
I don't know if Christian Bale's a terrible person.
We've talked. He's definitely a terrible person. He's been like he's beaten his wife and his mother-in-law, and abuses people on film sets all the time. Everybody hates working with him.
I don't remember
He's a
hearing about
terrible person.
Didn't remember hearing about the beating, but all right.
He's had
I
the cops
forgot-
called multiple times on his mother-in-law.
All right. I forgot that he was in this movie until I put it on. So I was pleasantly surprised to see Christian Bale's name pop up.
The one thing that kind of worried me about the movie, though, is when I saw Logan Lerman's name pop up. He is somebody. He plays the oldest son. He is somebody that has been given way too many opportunities. He's not a good actor.
That kid's face annoys me.
Yeah. And this, I would say, is probably his best performance, and I think it's the director. And even this, like, he only had like 2 expressions in the whole movie.
Dad!
And he wasn't good, but he did. He said he had Percy Jackson. He had that franchise. He had he got the lead in the remake of the 2011 remake of Three Musketeers. He was in Fury, Perks of Being Wallflower. Like, he's had all these major opportunities, and he hasn't been good in any of them. So, like, when I saw this, I was like, son of a
good
bitch.
agent.
Logan Lerman's in this. Yeah, for sure. Like, somebody likes him. He keeps getting roles, but he didn't bother me that much in this movie. So, you know what? Good on him. This movie, from the beginning, just kind of rips. Like, it starts with... Movie rips. That's the very beginning.
It's good. End of podcast.
Christian Bale, Logan Lerman, wake up, dead of night. Something's going on. We find out that this version of Dan Evans, missing a foot.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
I like that they added this little subplot for him that he borrowed some money, right?
Yeah.
He
So
borrowed
in
some money
this
that
one,
hasn't paid
it's
back yet.
in this one, it's almost like if the incident that caused this whole movie, the robbery, happened a few weeks later from the original one. Because the original movie, he was on his way into town to try to borrow money, and it's like in this one, he got that money and just hadn't paid it back. And this one's a little bit different. Like, I
The
feel like
situation
this one
seems a lot
shows you.
more dire.
This one, it just seems like more realistic. Like, it's shitty to live in the Wild West.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying.
'Cause-
I think he says in the movie we're 6 days away from dying or whatever.
Yeah. So he has a week to get some money to pay back the guy who he owes money. And the situation is even more fucked up because the guy who he owes money owns a ranch upriver from him. And he dammed the water specifically to make it where Christian Bale's character couldn't pay back the money.
And he also opens the movie by burning down Christian Bale's farm.
Correct. So he burns down the barn. And this is where we get kind of the first scene. Like, they really go ham on Dan Evans as kind of a bitch. Like, in the first movie, the sons kind of look at him for being a little bit of a bitch for not stopping the robbery, but forgive him immediately when he brings the guy over to dinner and says, like, I'm going to bring this guy on the train to Yuma. The kids are like, okay, cool. My dad's cool. In this one, like, Logan Lerman is just like, Dad, you're such a bitch. You won't go in the fire and get the feed.
Yeah,
And everything. And he's like,
it's almost a little too much, but maybe that's because it's Logan Lerman. But I appreciate that the character motivations are more clear because I think it makes the central conflict of the movie more clear, which is that, and I'm kind of repeating myself from the earlier movie, but it's stated more clearly in this movie. Dan Evans and Ben Wade are two sides of the same coin. They approach life in a completely different way. And I think they're basically like, there's 2 ways to live in the West. You can either be a poor, law-abiding ranch hand who lives almost at the mercy of the people who have money, like the guy that lives upriver from him that he owes money to, or you can be an outlaw and you could be killed any day and you have to be ruthless and heartless, but You can fuck whoever you want. You can travel the countryside. You're free until the day you die, and blah, blah, blah. And I think ultimately what this movie is sort of saying is that neither one of those ways of life are really ideal, and both of these men have to find a middle ground or learn a little bit from each other to live a better life, which is funny to say because the end of the movie, you know, spoiler warning, is Christian Bale dying. But Christian Bale's whole arc in this movie is growing a fucking backbone and standing up for something or doing something for pride or for whatever, for legacy.
For sure. And I was
and
gonna
Russell
say this...
Crowe also kind of like, you know, he's the Grinch, man. He kind of grows a fucking heart. I mean, he's charming and he admires, you know, beauty. He's he's drawing the picture of the eagle at the beginning, or the hawk or whatever, and then the woman.
That was the love interest in Hocus Pocus.
And then he ends up drawing the woman that he sleeps with, and then he draws Dan at the end of the movie. And I think that's sort of the movie saying he finally respects Dan, and he wants to protect the things that he respects, you know, that he admires for whatever reason. And that's why he ends up killing his gang, because they kill Dan.
Yeah. So what I liked about this one, like, this one is definitely much more gruesome, and it shows how shitty it is to be in the West. So, like, the opening of the movie, they're robbing a stagecoach again, but this is the payroll for the railroad versus just a stagecoach for passengers. I'm
going to interrupt you again. I really like the fact that they incorporated the railroad more in this movie. And
I agree.
It's not like they're not the first movie to do this, but not too many movies do this where it's totally cliche. I think it's an interesting thing to incorporate the railroad being built in a movie about the West, because it is such an important part of, you know, that era in the country. And it really it shows, I don't know, it shows a lot of things.
No, I agree. And like, it sets it up where it makes a lot more sense that when Butterfield is throwing money around, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and this is what I wanted to say. I think it gives a presence for the government / corporations in early America, and that's relevant to the story that's being told with Ben and Dan, because neither one of them are corporate men or involved in the government in any way. Dan fought for the North in the Civil War, but he was just a soldier, and he didn't even fight in any, you know, crazy battles or anything. He says the one time that he fought, it was in retreat. So I think having Butterfield there as a representative of the railroad, and having the railroad being built throughout this entire thing, by the end of the movie, it sort of becomes this third character that our two leads can bounce off of, and Russell Crowe moves away from being the bad guy and just becomes sort of the other side of this coin, and they're both reacting to the changing terrain, to the changing country, to the changing times.
For sure.
And that makes the two of them really interesting at the end of the movie for me.
Well, and I think, you know, at the beginning of this movie, I think it's really effective that this isn't the same as the other one. So, like, as they're robbing that, like, there's one point where you have Fonda is in this movie. Henry Fonda is in this movie, and he plays like a bounty hunter who works for the railroad station, keeping it safe. And
Pinkerton.
Yeah, he's a Pinkerton, and I think that was a really cool character to add in this. But there's a point where you see that he's sharper than some of the thugs or the gang, and like there's one point where like clearly they have like nitroglycerin too.
Like he takes a bullet to the stomach and then he goes back
multiple.
out.
He takes multiple bullets into the stomach and then goes out. But he ends up looking at some guy's saddlebag and just guesses that there's like nitroglycerin in there and like shoots it, and it, you know, blows up. And you see like several of the gang dies at the beginning of this movie. So it's like, dude, this is crazy. And then
it happens in the first movie too, but it's more brutal in this one for sure.
Not as many people. Like this one was a lot of people died at the beginning of the movie. Like we saw probably half a dozen guys die at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. And
then you had, I think this was even more brutal when you get that scene where one of the guys gets one of Ben Wade's gang, you know, around the neck and is using him as a human shield. Like it's two separate shots. And it, like at this one, it goes on a little bit longer, and the guy's like, "Oh, you fucked up, you idiot!" And then he's talking to the guy who has his like arm and the gun to his head, and then he looks at Ben. He's like, "Oh no!" And then he shoots him, and then shoots the guy second. So it's like 2 shots in this one, as opposed to shooting through him. So I thought that was a little bit more like, shit, this guy's way more ruthless.
Yeah.
And then when we get into it, everything else plays out the same. Like, oh, you'll get your horses back in a little bit, get your cows back. We're not going to hurt you. That's the same. You get into town, and this is where I actually felt like he was a little bit more lecherous with the barmaid. Like, it didn't seem as
it
it
seems
seemed
a little bit
creepier.
It seems creepier, and part of that's the music too. The first movie didn't. I don't think there's any score over that part. And this one, it's like,
Yeah. And it's also Russell Crowe, who, like, we know he's not a good dude in real life either. So it's like, it just seemed a little creepier. And, like, I wouldn't say the age difference was that much bigger, but it just seemed different, and she didn't seem comfortable with it. And then all of a sudden she's like in bed, like smiling, like she clearly enjoyed herself. And like you pointed out, he's drawing her. So that was a little jarring. The same kind of thing happens where Dan comes and asks for money, and, you know, you killed my cows, you did this, my labor. Everything works out exactly the same.
I like the way that scene played out in the new one a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it was a little.
It's mostly
I think
the
the
same,
timing.
Yeah,
The timing was
choice
better.
of angles and stuff. I like the new one more.
And that comes down to, like, you've pointed this out in a bunch of other movies, 50 years worth of filmmaking. You could shoot the
It's even
exact
just
same
two different-
script.
2 different actors.
Yeah.
You know, four
Yeah.
different actors.
So a bunch of different things, but it is a much better scene. But what I thought was a much more effective scene was when they do the plan, they have the stagecoach go into the ditch, and they swap the guy out. They are at the ranch, and Logan Lerman is kind of like enamored by Ben. Like, he sees this guy who's brave and tough.
Well, it becomes like
And-
not a love triangle, but a triangle dynamic between Ben and Dan's son. You get this
for sure.
feeling that Dan is, Dan's son. What's his name in the movie?
I think it's
Mark?
William.
Yeah, the younger one's Mark, the older one's William. So William is, really disenfranchised with his dad. Thinks his dad is a coward and a
He
fuck
thinks
up.
he's a coward. Yeah.
And he really looks up to Ben, and you're like, oh man, this kid is gonna choose this guy over his dad. It's sad. It rhymes.
The other thing that I thought was interesting was in the first movie, when they're at the dinner, you get a little bit more of the wife's backstory, and you hear that, she came from a semi-affluent family. Her father was a shipping captain and had like his own boat and his own vessel, and she married Dan. They came out here. In this one, but when Ben talks to her, he's like, "You look familiar. You look just like this person that I met in San Francisco," which
That
is the
was a sea
backstory
captain.
from the original movie.
Yeah,
And
it's a nice little-
and everything. So it's a nod, but in this one, she looks like she knows him a little bit. Like, maybe this is true, and she's pretending she doesn't. I thought that was a little interesting, where it's like,
I didn't pick up on
well, so I looked it up. Apparently, a lot of people think that Ben is actually William's father, and that Dan isn't the biological father of the older son. Now, there's nothing. None of the filmmakers have said anything about that, but
that.
that's
That's a fun
something that
little
I
thing
found.
to sort of hint at or whatever.
I
Plant a
saw
seed.
that on a Reddit thread. I also saw it on Quora, that question answer kind of thing. But it's I picked up on, I was like, do they actually know each other? Because in the first movie, it just seemed like he was doing that line, like, "Oh, you have green eyes, don't you? I love green eyes." She's actually, they're brown. The same thing he did with the barmaid. But in this, I felt like there was more of a connection, like she knew him.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if that theory is true or not, because the movie got you to think about it a little bit, and that's part of the I don't want to say central conflict of the movie, because I already said something else is, but that's like a very high priority conflict in the movie, is who
I
William
agree.
treats as a father figure.
So this one, they have a little bit more of a posse. So they have Buttermilk is with them the whole time.
Yeah,
And-
fucking K2SO.
Yep. You have Doc. Doc is actually a doc in this one. So Alex Potter is a veterinarian, but he's also the town doctor.
Played by the wonderful
you-
Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk, which is great. He has almost the exact same death in this as he did in Serenity, where he has like
and also in Rogue One.
Yeah, where he has like a good little quip. He did something great, has a little quip, and then dies.
Heroic death.
Yeah, he was great.
Man. I want to cast him in something and give him a heroic death.
Oh, he's so good. I love him and every Tucker and Dale versus Evil, one of my favorite movies.
I wasn't expecting him to be in this movie because he's usually a comedic actor, and I know that he's capable of drama, but he's usually a comedic actor. And I literally laughed out loud when I saw him come on screen because I was like, what the fuck is he doing in this movie? And then immediately forgot that I thought it was funny because he's just good.
He's great in this movie. You have Henry Fonda goes along with them, and this movie's a little bit different because we see a lot more of the journey. So they go about their way. They end up.
It's almost more of a buddy cop movie or a road trip buddy movie in that sense.
We actually see pretty early on in this movie that there is a respect between Ben and Dan, because like the first night that they're kind of camping, there's a point where they switch the guard, and Kevin Durand, who is I think that's his name, but he's the guy who burned down the ranch at the beginning of the movie,
and he plays a fucking asshole in every movie. Poor guy.
He does. This guy, I met him working retail. He is the nicest, sweetest guy. He's such a cool guy. And he has like a family. He's got a couple of cute kids, and I was, helping him and his family buy a bunch of stuff, and they were there for a long time. So he asked me to like put on a movie for the kids, and I went and put on like a movie for the kids in like the screening room. But no, he was a super, super cool guy. But he has this little bit where he just decides to be annoying to Ben Wade. And he's like singing, and Ben's like, hey, dude, come on. And he's like, dude, if I have to stay awake, you have to stay awake. And then he falls asleep. And so Ben like kept the fork from the dinner. Nobody checked him, but he had a fork, and he ends up killing this guy. Everyone wakes up, and Dan's like, dude, why did you not kill me? Why'd you not kill McElroy? Why him? And he's like, well, one, he annoyed me. Two, you mentioned that he burned down your barn and that you wanted him dead. And Dan's like, dude, and this goes directly to your point. Solid. Yeah, it goes to exactly your kind of, opposite side of the coin, where they think alike, but they just don't behave the same. And so he's like, there's a difference between wanting someone dead and actually killing them. And Ben's kind of like, well, you got what you wanted and you didn't have to do it. But he could have easily...
You're talking about a code of honor. They almost have the same values or moral code, with the exception that Ben is willing to kill, or maybe it's just that he believes that the ends justify the means,
right?
And Dan isn't willing to. Oh my God, he's Batman again!
Yeah, but he really does have
Joker
that
in this movie.
Yeah, he has that code, and he could have easily killed either of those people, or he could have just run away.
That is such an effective, jarring, wonderful death scene too.
It is.
Like I looked away from the screen for a second, and then I heard the noise and I was like, "What is?" I looked up. I was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "Oh fuck!" He's like, it's what you see in like the thing that they do in like prison shanking movies now.
Yeah, he was just like shivving him over and over and over again. Yeah,
yeah.
So it's very effective. And then I don't remember exactly what happened, but they realize they have to take a shortcut. And they go through Apache territory, and there's a point where they get ambushed, and Ben's like, dude, we shouldn't do this. And before they even, while they're walking through Apache territory, Fonda just says something about Ben's mother, and he loses it and ends up just throwing Henry Fonda off the cliff. And he's awesome. Like, dude, I might be a criminal, but you still don't talk about my mom.
He says even bad guys love their moms.
Exactly. And I thought that was fun. And
he's got another line in that part where he says, man's nature is to take what he wants. And I think that's the best explanation of his motivation in this movie.
And just another sense of that code. It wasn't until McElroy disrespected him that he wanted to kill him. At the beginning of the movie, he was like, oh, hey, it's you.
He's got like a friendly rivalry.
Right. And Charlie, who we haven't talked about in this movie at all, but played masterfully by Ben Foster.
He's fantastic
he
in this.
he shoots the guy once, and then they realize who it was, and he kind of gave him attitude. So Ben Foster shoots him a second time, and Ben kind of looks at him like, dude, that wasn't cool. But like, he lives, and he finally disrespects him, so he ends up killing him. So they get ambushed by Apaches, and Ben goes like Solid Snake up the mountain, kills all the Apaches by himself, and then comes back down and is just like the prisoner again. To an extent, like he ends, like he still decides to work with them, and he says, "I just did it to survive," but they made it through. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Like, he's still stuck with them.
That ties into the end of the movie, though, because I feel like all of that stuff is handled a little. It's a little foggy every time they do that, and that's kind of the end of the movie too, right? Because there's a section at the end of the movie where Christian Bale has to get Russell Crowe from the hotel to the train station. He has to get him through town, and not only are Ben Wade's gang members trying to kill Christian Bale to get him back, they've also reverse deputized a bunch of men in the town with guns to shoot Christian Bale, and just saying that they'll pay him $200 or whatever. So they've essentially let an angry mob loose, or a greedy mob loose. So the part that is not handled super well to me is like halfway through this chase, Christian Bale and Russell Crowe have this moment where Christian Bale is like, I might not make it out of here, but I need to, he essentially says, like, I need to do something for my sons to be proud of, because I fought in this battle. I didn't even fight in a battle. I retreated and I lost a foot, and I've been, a punk ass for years since then, and I need to give my son something to remember me by,
to be proud of.
Russell Crowe's kind of like, all right, I respect that. I'm going to go ahead and go to prison for you so that you have something to tell your kid.
It goes,
and like, that makes sense, but then he's like dodging bullets for him, and he's like, and Russell Crowe is running ahead of Christian Bale, like, come on, buddy, this way. This will get me to the train where they're going to take me to prison. Okay. And that's not even the weirdest part. The weirdest part is that that his fucking rabid dog, Ben Foster, his second his right hand, is what his lieutenant or whatever, is watching this happen, and he's like, why are you running out ahead of him, dude? Just like, if you're in control, run towards me. What are we doing here? But that doesn't happen, and that feels a little weird to me.
What I think sets this apart, and this is, I think, is probably the most effective scene for me personally. There's a point when they get to the hotel in contention. They have to kill an hour before. Now, this movie, I think, makes a lot more sense. I told you, like, the biggest plot hole in the first movie was there should have been no way that everyone can get into town. In this one, they find out immediately that they're going to contention. They follow the stagecoach. They threaten to burn this man alive. And they're like, dude, they're going to contention. They're going to get on the train. And they even acknowledge it's 80 miles away. And I looked it up. A horse, typically you would go about 20 to 30 miles a day. You could get about 80 to 100 miles if you had multiple horses and you changed them out. And so this, like, the crew is like, why are we going after Ben? Ben Foster, who plays Charlie Prince, kills the guy who's like questioning why they're going to go save Ben Wade. And then he goes, cool, we're going to ride as far as we can. We'll buy new horses, and then we'll keep going. We're going to go get our leader. So they at least kind of acknowledge the timeline. I appreciated that. Yeah. But they get into town. They're waiting, and they have this moment, so where it happens in the other movie, where Ben says, hey, I'll give you $1,000 just to walk away and everything. So in the first movie, it was $7,000. Like, hey, I'll give you $7,000 to walk away. And Dan's just like, no. Like, he doesn't even entertain it. It's just no. He's holier than thou. Not going to happen. In this one, I actually really appreciated the scene where it's dialogue is exactly the same. The whole exchange going back and forth, like, hey, it's raining. You don't need the money anymore, but I'm going to give it to you. You can go be a wealthy ranch hand. You can hire people. You can send your boys to school. Your wife could be bona fide. And Christian Bale goes, no, I can't. And it ties into the, I need my story. He goes, I couldn't do that because everybody would know. Like, how could I spend this money? Everybody would know that you gave me this money. All of a sudden I'm just rich, So I liked that scene. But then you get the same thing where Butterfield and his posse chicken out. They run away. And he has this really great moment with, like, it's not worth it. And he tells his son, like, hey, we have to do this. You go and be a man. You go take care of the family. Like, you are a man now, and I trust you. And so you see this whole time, Ben is watching that. Yeah, like Ben, I'll tell you why it really choked me up in a second. So it's a very effective scene. He's now saying, hey, William, you're a man. I've got to do this. This is the right thing to do. Doc Potter died for this. Henry Fonda died for this. All these people died for it. Who am I to do anything less? But you're a child and you have your brother and your mom to look after. You go.
It's the most Western thing. It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do. And then this whole movie, once again, is about this man who's trying to leave behind a legacy for his son. And the reason this one really affected me, like I actually teared up watching this scene, and you see Ben is just like, holy shit, this guy really loves him. And we find out, you mentioned the scene where they kind of have this heart to heart, but we find out that Ben's father died and then his mom abandoned him at a train station. And so he desperately wants a family, and he sees this man who's willing to do whatever he can for his son. So his son,
and they're at a train station.
Yeah. And his son he really cares about what his son thinks. And that hit me really hard because, a few weeks back, I started going to therapy again. And this last Wednesday, I had a session, and we actually really talked about my family. And I realized I don't have a relationship with my family right now. My parents like disowned me a few years back. And then I was really kind of unpacking things, and I realized, and I'm not going to get into it, but my dad wasn't a very good dad. He did a lot of things that were pretty fucked up. And so it's just like this whole movie, seeing a man who was willing to go to the ends of the earth, who was willing to die just so his son respected him. And here I am, having a family. Like I haven't talked to my dad in years, and he's realizing, like during my therapy, so I realized like I hadn't had any positive reinforcement from my father in decades. So it really hit, everything. So yeah, if you go get therapy,
I feel you, man. Therapy is great. I'm also in therapy, and it's wonderful. It's probably saved my life.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I had a really rough couple of days afterwards. I unpacked a bunch of stuff, and then watching this movie, I was just like, holy shit. And then watching Bill and Ted 3, once again, another father, doing what they can for their kids. Like in that movie, I don't want to spoil it because that's not an episode, but they have a big sacrifice for their kids in that movie. So that really touched me on this. So you get this scene where they're working together to get through, and then at the end of the movie, like they did it. We think we're getting that happy ending. You think they're going to get on the train and go to Yuma, and everything's going to be great. And Ben's like having this like rah, rah, rah moment with Dan's like, dude, you did it. Like you did it. And like Dan's son, broke his orders and came and actually rescued them at some point by like setting cattle free as a distraction. And you think it's a good ending. And Ben's like, you did it, bud. I'm really proud of you. And then he's just like, no, 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 no. He does the Shia LaBeouf no. And then we see Dan get shot in the back. And then he's like, no, 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 stop. And then Charlie Prince shows up, and then he just unloads on Dan. And it's really sad. And you see, he gets his moment with the son, and the son's super proud of him. Like, it is a happy ending, even though it's a happy ending, but it's tragic.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, Ben kills everybody. Like, he kills his entire crew, and then just gets back on the train. And the implication, is like, I love the ending because he whistles and his horse comes. So like the implication was like, he did right by Dan and he's going to escape right away, but he still got onto the train and Dan succeeded. And I thought that was a really effective ending and a more realistic ending. Like it felt a lot like True Grit, where the end of the first True Grit is a very happy one. And the end of the remake, like Haley Steinfeld's character gets bitten by a rattlesnake and loses her arm, which is like just a dark ending.
But that's
for no
what
reason.
would happen.
Yeah.
That's funny you're talking about losing an arm, because I'm writing a thing right now and I just changed the ending. Somebody loses an arm and it's a little bit more tragic, but it also feels like what would happen in that situation.
Right. That's fun.
Yeah. I just, plug in my own stuff. Hollywood, call me. Yeah, I kind of laughed at the horse thing at the end, and thinking back on it, I like that it's there and it's fine the way it is. But in the moment, I was like, oh, that's silly, because he's on the train and he's like 50 yards away, and he just sort of whistles, and the horse is like, oh fuck, all right, here I go, I heard my master, I'm gonna follow him. And I'm like, yo, it's the sound of a train and he's that far away. I don't know.
Right.
But I like it. It's it's got a little tall tale vibe to it, and that's kind of cool. I had a thought about him killing his whole crew too, and I didn't have it until like 30 minutes after the movie, but because I didn't like, that's another thing, I didn't love it in the moment. I was kind of like, I don't know that this all pays off. And once I sat with it for 20 or 30 minutes, it kind of sank in, and I was like, all right, no, I like this. I like the way it happened. My thought about him killing his whole crew, my thought in general about the end of the movie and these two guys is, like I said, they're more similar than either one of them would have thought. And I think the two of them meeting each other brought both of them a little bit back from each of their extreme, of being a ruthless, heartless outlaw and being a poverty-stricken rancher who's too scared to do anything. He's not a hero, and he sort of grows a pair during the movie.
So,
and hold on, I had a point here. Oh yeah, so when he kills his crew at the end, that the thought that I had was like, oh man, this guy, like, it feels like he's correcting a wrong. It feels like he realized that he put together this crew, this crew of badasses, of fucking animals that will do anything for him, and they're just like soulless fucking evil men doing awful things in the West. And he was like, you know what, I did a bad thing here. I need to get rid of these guys. I'm still going to be an outlaw. I'm going to escape from jail. I'm probably going to go rob some more people, but I can't let this thing that I've let loose in the world exist anymore. And specifically Ben Foster. Like, Ben Foster was a fucking monster in this movie. Like, he's the real bad guy. He's the evil.
Yeah, he's like the stereotypical just outlaw that they'll get a whole posse just to kill that one guy kind of character.
Yeah. So I think Russell Crowe meeting Christian Bale allowed him to correct this wrong that he had.
And I think what it comes down to is, I think you're right, is that he realized this crew doesn't align with my values. And I think where this movie actually telegraphs that a little earlier is in the original movie. He tells everyone to scatter and they go out, and he has the Charlie Prince in that one is the one that happens to find them. But they do seem to have like a good relationship, and he doesn't kill a bunch of his own guys. Like, he kills the one guy at the beginning of the movie, but they don't, like, that action scene at the end of the movie is mainly them running around town dodging. Where in this one, like, they're killing everybody, and including townspeople and everything at the end of the movie. But I think in this one, it's telegraphed pretty early when they're at the bar and he's about to, get with the barmaid, and he tells everyone to leave. Charlie's like, well, I'll hang around. And Russell Crowe kind of looks at him like, dude, what the fuck did I just tell you to do? I told you to leave. I don't need a babysitter. And I think he's already...
You're not Jerry Falwell Jr., buddy.
Yeah, he's like, I think in this one, he's already kind of annoyed with the Charlie Prince character. And then he sees all this, like, he needs a crew that listens to him. And at the end, when he says to stand down, when they don't stand down, and they keep shooting, because they're like, a couple times during the chase throughout town, he yells at them to stop, and he's like, hey, knock it off, and they don't. And especially when he kills Dan, shoots them the once and says, hey, don't do it again, and he does it. It's just like, yeah, I need to kill these guys. They don't follow my directions, and they don't follow my values.
Yeah, and that's actually, that exact sentiment is hinted at in the first scene of the movie, where I think the movie opens on Ben Wade drawing this hawk, and he's just like, this is beautiful, I'm just going to do a little sketch just for me. And Charlie rides up and he's like, hey man, the stagecoach is coming, we gotta go. And he's like, all right, finishes up his drawing and then just sticks it on the branch. And I thought that was nice. He just left this little drawing of this bird on the branch. And actually Charlie scares off the bird, which is kind of a nice touch too. And then afterwards he rides away, and Charlie rides up to the branch, and he looks at the drawing, and you can tell he just like doesn't get it. He's like, why would you draw a bird? Like, what's this? And that is exactly what you're describing that happens at the end of the movie. Like, Ben Wade realizes this guy doesn't align with his values.
Yep, I think so. I think these boat movies were both very good. I think this one is exactly what a reboot should be or a remake should be. It has the spirit of the original, but it elaborates. It uses new film techniques to make a much more realistic and just engaging film.
This is also a gorgeous movie, by the way. I commented
It's
on the
beautiful.
cinematography in the first one. The second one is also gorgeous. And they like, I tried to look it up. I didn't have enough time to properly research it, but they definitely shot it on film. So that's a thing. And then I feel like they were trying to mimic like Technicolor colors or something, or they push the saturation just a little more than they normally would, something. But it's gorgeous. It really, it evokes old Westerns.
Oh, I agree. I thought it was very effective, and I felt like I was in that world. And you kind of mentioned with the first movie, and Westerns did this, all of them did this, but they were all almost too pretty and their clothes were too clean and too, pressed and firm and everything. And I think the modern
The actors look
Westerns
like
do-
actors.
Yeah. And then this, like, they took Christian Bale, who is a handsome man, and they give him like the long greasy hair, and
Yeah, they beat the shit out of him.
he looks dirty. He has like the scars and everything. You have all these people and their clothes are all dirty. Like, it's much more realistic, and it feels like it feels like a period piece, where like the original movies are, your spaghetti westerns, all those westerns, like they don't feel authentic, where this feels like an authentic experience.
Some of the spaghetti westerns are pretty dirty, though. Sergio Leone's movies are pretty dirty.
Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. Like, a lot of them, like, especially when you look at a lot of the John Wayne obviously he's like the quintessential Western
I'm just
guy.
defending Sergio Leone.
Yeah, his are fine, but generally they're just like, oh,
Those are like two
it's
very-
fun to play this.
Those are two very different eras of.
It's like
Westerns, though.
adults playing cops and robbers. Like, it's
Yeah.
It's like playing a game, where this is like, no, we're actually making a movie that takes place in this time period. I think it's a much more effective film. And I very, very much enjoyed the first one.
So I would say you can watch the remake without having watched the old one, unless you feel like rewatching the old one. But I think this one really stands on its own.
I think so too. I really think it's a worthwhile movie. And I really enjoyed watching it. And, with all the stuff going on the previous week, like it really resonated with me on a personal level. So good stuff.
Maybe we can just watch Pete's Dragon again next week and just fucking
Pete's Dragon
cry.
was fun. So,
Oh, we're gonna watch Fast and Furious next.
yeah, Fast and Furious. So going into the news, there were a few stories, but I don't really want to go into it. I just want to take a moment and say, it sucks. Chadwick Boseman passed this week. And it's sad. It's very, very sad. And that's
It's heartbreaking. It's
he
heartbreaking.
was a legend. Alex and I were talking about this via text the other day, and he was, he was a legend. He's gonna be remembered well after we're gone, for just playing so many legendary figures already. And, you take away Black Panther, and he was already playing these legendary characters, and he was going to be a staple in cinema. And then you take Black Panther, which obviously was its own thing, and it's a huge loss.
Seeing I've already Black Panther came out, I was very I was looking at all the reviews, and there's a lot of like press about what it meant to people and stuff, as far as within the Black culture to have a Black superhero on the level of Marvel. So I was kind of familiar with all that stuff, but just to see it again when he passed, like seeing everybody talking about what it meant to them to have that character there, was just really moving. And yeah, it's heartbreaking to lose him.
Yeah, I agree. I met him. I was blessed to meet him once, very, very briefly, and I remember him just being very humble, and it was really cool. I was still working in a retail environment, and it was close to closing, and there were a group of employees standing around. They really shouldn't have been, but we were close to closing, so none of the managers really wanted to, nitpick. And he walked by, and one person saw him in the group and looked up and got all excited. And he did the chest cross, the Wakanda Forever kind of chest cross, and then held up his finger to his mouth as to like, dude, this is our secret. And I talked to him very briefly because I went and offered to help him out. Like, hey, obviously it looks like you're trying to be on the deal. What do you need? And I walked him over to a specific section and hooked him up with a very discreet salesperson. But he was very nice, very humble, and it's a bummer he's gone. And like this, yeah, that's really all I have to say. It's a huge loss.
Yeah, and I just want to say if you're listening to this and you've been following the news, I think it's worth pointing out that he's had this for 4 years. He made all of the Black Panther appearances, Black Panther, Civil War, and both Avengers movies while he was sick.
Yeah, it's just insane. I can't even imagine what he was going through.
It's a fucking legend, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it. No other news this week. We're just gonna end this episode as kind of a tribute to Chadwick Boseman, and that's it. Other than our plugs, we're not gonna plug anything other than just thanks for listening, and go watch some Chadwick Boseman movies this week if you're feeling up to it. I really want to watch Black Panther, but I don't think I'm quite emotionally ready. But if you guys are, just honor him and watch some of his movies.
Yeah.
And thanks for listening.